Pressure isn't your enemy. Comfort is. If you're allergic to pressure, you're weak by design. Every man who says he wants growth but avoids pressure is lying to himself. Pressure is the tax paid for power. No pressure means no standards. No standards means no identity. And without identity, you're just another replaceable body pretending to be special. I'm not here to motivate you. I'm here to expose you. If pressure scares you, it's because it's pointing directly at the parts of you that are unbuilt. You've been taught that pressure is unhealthy, that stress is damage, that discomfort is a warning sign. That's soft thinking designed to keep you average. Pressure doesn't break strong men. Pressure reveals who was never strong to begin with. Steel doesn't complain when it's forged. It either hardens or it cracks. And if you crack, good. At least now you know the truth about yourself. Instead of hiding behind excuses and podcasts, pressure forces a man to speak in tongues. Not religion, transformation. When pressure hits hard enough, the old language dies. The weak internal dialogue collapses. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop explaining. You stop justifying. You operate from instinct, precision, and command. That's speaking in tongues. It's when your actions move faster than your emotions. When discipline replaces thought. When your nervous system stops panicking and starts executing. This is where identity shifts. Under pressure, you don't rise to your goals. You fall to your standards. And if your standards are low, pressure will expose you as fraud. That's why most men avoid it. Pressure demands control. Control of your body, control of your time, control of your mouth. When pressure is constant, only disciplined behavior survives. Everything else gets burned out. That's not suffering, that's purification. Pressure strips fantasy. It kills the version of you that talks big and performs small. It forces dominance internally before you ever earn it externally. You learn to move when you don't feel like it. You learn to decide without reassurance. You learn to carry weight without applause. This is how men are built. Not through comfort, not through balance. There's sustained, deliberate pressure that reshapes how you think, move, and react. Most people want growth without compression. They want confidence without testing. They want status without scars. That's why they stay weak. Pressure doesn't care about your feelings. It only respects structure. And when a man survives pressure repeatedly, his mind changes. Chaos stops being scary. Stress becomes familiar. Difficulty becomes normal. That's when dominance becomes natural instead of forced. Pressure is the price of power, and anyone who tells you otherwise is either lying or has never carried real weight in their life. Power has never been free and has never been gentle. Every position of authority, every sharp mind, every dominant presence you respect was paid for with sustained pressure. Long hours when quitting would have been easier. Decisions made without certainty. Responsibility carried without applause. Pressure isn't a side effect of success. It's the entrance fee. If your life feels light, unchallenging, comfortable, it's not because you're winning. It's because you're not important enough yet for pressure to be assigned to you. Most men say they want power, but what they actually want is the image of it without the weight that comes with it. They want confidence without responsibility, money without stress, respect without standards. That fantasy collapses the moment pressure shows up. Pressure doesn't negotiate, doesn't care about your mood, your past, or your intentions. It demands output, and that's exactly why it's valuable. Pressure filters out delusion. It separates men who can perform from men who only talk. The moment pressure enters your life, excuses lose their credibility. Pressure forces clarity. When the stakes are low, men waste time overthinking, doubting, procrastinating. When pressure is high, clarity becomes survival. You either act or you fall behind. You either adapt or you get replaced. This is why pressure sharpens men. It compresses time, strips away useless behavior, and forces focus. Under pressure, priorities become obvious. Weak habits get exposed. Discipline stops being optional. That's how power is built through environments that don't allow softness to survive. Look closely at any man with real authority, and you'll find a history of pressure he didn't escape from. Financial pressure that forced him to master value. Social pressure that forced him to develop presence. Physical pressure that built endurance. Mental pressure that trained emotional control. None of these were comfortable. None were balanced. But all of them were necessary. Pressure teaches you how to carry more without collapsing. That capacity to carry weight is the real definition of power. Men who avoid pressure don't stay neutral. They decay. Comfort slowly erodes sharpness. Without pressure, standards drop. Without standards, discipline fades. Without discipline, fades. You stop trusting yourself because you've never tested yourself. Pressure, on the other hand, creates self-respect. When you survive hard environments repeatedly, you develop an internal certainty that no external validation can replace. You know what you can handle because you've handled it. Pressure also builds credibility, not reputation credibility, the kind that can't be faked. When a man has lived under pressure, it shows in how he speaks, moves, and decides. He doesn't rush. He doesn't panic. He doesn't seek reassurance. He's been tested. Pressure removes the need to prove anything because the proof already exists internally. That calm dominance people mistake for confidence is actually familiarity with stress. If you want power, pressure isn't something to tolerate until life gets easier. Life doesn't get easier. You get stronger. Pressure is the training ground where weak reactions die and controlled responses are born. Every level up demands more pressure, not less. More responsibility, more consequences, more expectation. Men who understand this stop running from difficulty and start positioning themselves where pressure is unavoidable. Power doesn't come from comfort zones, affirmations, or motivation. It comes from exposure to pressure that forces growth, whether you feel ready or not. If pressure has entered your life, it's not an attack, it's an invitation. An invitation to grow heavier, sharper, and more capable. Reject it, and you stay light. Accept it, and you begin to carry the kind of weight only powerful men can handle. Pressure doesn't create weakness, it reveals it. That's the part most men can't accept. They want to believe pressure is unfair, that stress is the reason they fail, that circumstances are the problem. That lie keeps them comfortable. The truth is harsher. Pressure exposes what was already there. When everything is calm, average men can pretend they're capable. When pressure enters the room, pretending becomes impossible. Anyone can look disciplined when nothing is at stake. Anyone can sound confident when outcomes don't matter. But introduce deadlines, consequences, risk, and responsibility, and suddenly the mask slips. Pressure strips performance down to its foundation. It shows whether your habits are real or borrowed, whether your competence is earned or imagined, whether your discipline exists or collapses the moment it's tested. This is why pressure is honest. It doesn't listen to your explanations. It doesn't care about your potential. It only measures output. Under pressure, talent without structure becomes useless. Intelligence without control turns into panic. Motivation without discipline evaporates. What survives is not what you claim to be, but what you've trained yourself to execute consistently. Most men hate pressure because it removes their favorite weapon, excuses. When pressure is low, failure can be blamed on timing, mood, energy, or lack of opportunity. Under pressure, none of that matters. The result is visible. Either you delivered or you didn't. Either you held frame or you cracked. Pressure forces accountability in its purest form, and accountability terrifies men who have built their identity on words instead of actions. Pressure also exposes emotional weakness. Not emotions themselves, but lack of control over them. When stress hits, some men become reactive, defensive, loud, chaotic. Others become calm, precise, and dangerous. That difference isn't personality, it's conditioning. Pressure shows whether you trained your nervous system to operate under load or whether you've been coasting through comfort your entire life. Look at how people behave when pressure increases. Some freeze, some lash out, some disappear, and a few sharpen. Those few don't rise magically in the moment. They fall back on habits forged long before the pressure arrived. That's the uncomfortable truth. Pressure doesn't upgrade you, it audits you. It runs a full diagnostic on your character, discipline, and mental structure. This is why avoiding pressure is self-sabotage. When you avoid pressure, you delay exposure. You protect a fragile self-image instead of building a strong one. You stay untested, which feels safe, but slowly rots your confidence. Deep down, you know you haven't proven anything. That quiet doubt follows you everywhere. Pressure ends that doubt one way or another. It either breaks you or builds you, but it never lies to you. Men who respect pressure seek it deliberately, not because they enjoy suffering, but because they value truth. They want to know where they stand. They want weak systems exposed early, not when the stakes are life-changing. Pressure shows you exactly what needs fixing. Your time management, your emotional control, your preparation, your standards. Every crack becomes visible, and visibility is the first step toward power. Pressure doesn't humiliate strong men. It validates them. When a man performs under pressure, something changes internally. He stops hoping he's capable and starts knowing it. That certainty can't be taught. It can only be earned through exposure. That's why men who have lived under pressure carry themselves differently. They've seen who they are when comfort is removed. If pressure keeps exposing you, that's not bad luck, that's feedback. Feedback most men run from because it's unforgiving. But for the few willing to face it, pressure becomes the most valuable mirror a man can stand in front of. Pressure doesn't politely ask you to change. It forces the issue. The identity you built in comfort is fragile by design, stitched together with preferences, moods, and excuses. Pressure walks in and starts tearing that identity apart immediately, not because it's cruel, but because it's accurate. Weak identity cannot survive sustained demand. The moment pressure rises, the version of you that relied on motivation, inspiration, or convenience begins to malfunction. Most men think identity is something you choose. That's false. Identity is something that remains when choice is removed. Pressure removes choice. It doesn't care what you like. It doesn't care what you believe about yourself. It only cares about what you can do repeatedly under stress. When pressure hits, you don't get to feel ready. You act or you collapse. That's when the old identity starts to die. The weak identity is built on flexibility. It wants options. It wants escape routes. It wants to negotiate effort based on mood. Pressure eliminates all of that. Under pressure, flexibility becomes liability. The man who needs perfect conditions stops functioning. The man who needs reassurance starts doubting. The man who needs comfort starts breaking. Pressure exposes how dependent the old identity was on things going your way. As pressure increases, something interesting happens. The mind stops fantasizing. It stops rehearsing imaginary futures. It becomes brutally present. This is where identity begins to shift. You start relying less on how you feel and more on what must be done. Emotional preferences lose authority. Discipline steps in not as a concept, but as a survival mechanism. You don't become disciplined because you read about it. You become disciplined because pressure punishes inconsistency immediately. Pressure doesn't allow fragmented identity. You can't be confident one day and lazy the next. You can't be focused in comfort and scattered in stress. Pressure demands alignment. Your thoughts, actions, and standards have to match or you fail fast. This forced alignment kills weak identity traits one by one. Procrastination gets punished. Excuses get exposed. Emotional volatility gets corrected through consequence. Control is born here. Not control over others, but control over self. Pressure trains you to regulate your reactions because uncontrolled reactions cost you. When mistakes are expensive, you stop being careless. When time matters, you stop drifting. When results are demanded, you stop pretending effort is enough. The identity that emerges under pressure is sharper, quieter, and far less emotional. This new identity doesn't need motivation. It doesn't wait to feel confident. It operates on standards. Standards don't fluctuate. Standards don't negotiate. Pressure forces you to either raise your standards or get eliminated by the environment. That's why pressure creates dominant men, not loud men, not aggressive men. Controlled men, men who do what needs to be done regardless of internal noise. Men who avoid pressure never complete this identity shift. They stay stuck in a personality instead of evolving into a system. Personality depends on mood. Systems run regardless. Pressure turns you into a system. Wake up, execute, adapt, repeat. No drama, no self-pity, no narrative. Just function. That's power at its core. The reason pressure feels threatening is because it targets the false version of you first. The version built on comfort feels like it's dying because it is. That's not loss. That's correction. Pressure doesn't destroy strong identity. It builds it by killing everything weak that was pretending to belong there. When pressure stays long enough, what remains is a man who trusts himself because his identity has been tested, stripped, and rebuilt under fire. This is why pressure is non-negotiable for growth. You cannot think your way into a stronger identity. You must be forced into it. Pressure does the forcing. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for readiness. It replaces who you thought you were with who you can actually sustain under weight. Most men think action comes after motivation. That belief alone keeps them weak. Speaking in tongues in the real sense begins when motivation dies. When pressure is high enough, the inner debate shuts down. There's no more discussion, no emotional bargaining, no "I'll start tomorrow." Action happens before thought finishes forming. That's the shift most people never experience because they live their entire lives negotiating with themselves. The average man's mind is noisy, constant commentary, justifications, fears, imagined outcomes, excuses disguised as logic. He waits until he feels aligned, confident, inspired. That waiting is the trap. Under real pressure, that entire internal dialogue gets crushed. There is no time to feel ready. There is only execution. That's where a different internal language takes over. Short, direct, command-based. Do this. Move now. Fix that. Next task. That's what acting without negotiation looks like. This state isn't mystical. It's mechanical. When consequences are immediate and real, the brain prioritizes survival over comfort. Emotional preference loses authority. You stop asking how you feel and start responding to what's required. That's why pressure creates a sharp, almost cold clarity. The mind simplifies, complexity disappears, only what matters remains. Men who have never lived in this state mistake it for aggression or intensity. It's neither. It's control. Negotiation is a luxury. You negotiate effort only when the cost of failure is low. As soon as the cost rises, negotiation becomes dangerous. Pressure teaches this lesson fast. If hesitation costs you status, money, respect, or opportunity, hesitation stops. You don't need discipline talks. You don't need reminders. You act because delay equals loss. Over time, this rewires you. Action becomes default. Thought becomes secondary. This is where real confidence comes from. Not affirmations, not self-belief. Confidence is knowing that when things get uncomfortable, you move anyway. That certainty is built when you've acted under pressure repeatedly. Each time you execute without waiting to feel good, you teach your nervous system a new rule. Action first, emotion later. Eventually, emotion stops interfering altogether. Men who live in negotiation mode are predictable. They start strong, fade fast, and disappear when resistance shows up. Men who've learned to act without negotiation are relentless. Not because they're emotional, but because they're structured. They don't ask permission from their moods. They don't seek internal consensus. They decide once and execute daily. Pressure is what teaches this. Because pressure punishes hesitation every time. There's also a silence that comes with this state. When you stop negotiating, the noise in your head drops. You're no longer arguing with yourself. You're not hyping yourself up or calming yourself down. You're simply doing the work. That silence is power. It frees cognitive space. Decisions get faster. Reactions get cleaner. You stop leaking energy through overthinking. This is why men who have lived under pressure often seem unbothered by chaos. They've already trained themselves to function without emotional alignment. They don't need ideal conditions. They don't need reassurance. They don't need motivation. Their system is built to operate regardless. That's the end result of speaking in tongues in this context. A man who moves on command, even when the command comes from reality itself. Most people will never reach this state because it requires surrendering comfort. It requires letting pressure override preference. It requires allowing action to lead and emotion to follow. But for the few who endure it, life changes permanently. You stop asking whether you can do hard things. You already know the answer. Discipline is not a personality trait, and it's not a decision you wake up and magically make. Anyone telling you otherwise has never been tested. Discipline is a survival response forged under pressure, not a skill downloaded from books or speeches. When life is easy, discipline is optional. When pressure closes in, discipline becomes the only thing that keeps you functioning. That's the difference most men refuse to face. In low-pressure environments, behavior is guided by emotion. You work when you feel like it. You rest when you're tired. You quit when it gets uncomfortable. That feels normal because there are no consequences for inconsistency. But the moment pressure enters, real pressure with cost-attached emotion becomes unreliable. Feelings fluctuate. Energy lies. Motivation disappears. Discipline steps in because something has to replace what just failed. Pressure forces repetition, and repetition under consequence builds discipline, whether you want it or not. When missing a workout weakens your body under demand, you stop skipping. When poor time management costs you money or status, you stop wasting time. When emotional reactions create losses, you learn control fast. Discipline is simply the behavior that remains after mistakes become too expensive to repeat. This is why discipline can't be taught through inspiration. Inspiration fades the moment resistance appears. Pressure doesn't fade, pressure stays. It applies weight daily until your system adapts or collapses. Men who survive pressure don't feel disciplined, they just move. Their behavior has been shaped by consequence, not motivation. That's why it lasts. Most men think discipline is about willpower. That's another lie. Willpower burns out. Discipline is structural. Pressure forces structure because chaos fails under load. You organize your day because disorder costs you. You control your impulses because impulsiveness backfires. You prepare because being unprepared hurts. Over time, discipline stops feeling forced. It becomes default behavior because anything else feels inefficient. Pressure also removes false confidence. You quickly learn that discipline isn't about intensity. It's about consistency. One strong effort doesn't protect you from repeated demand. Pressure keeps coming. That forces sustainable behavior. You stop sprinting emotionally and start pacing strategically. Discipline becomes calm, boring, and extremely effective. That's how real systems are built. This is where mental toughness is actually created. Not in moments of hype, but in long stretches of pressure, where quitting would be easier but more costly. Every time you execute without motivation, your identity shifts slightly. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who finishes. That identity change compounds fast. Men who avoid pressure never develop this discipline because nothing forces it. They rely on routines that collapse the moment life interferes. Their discipline works only in perfect conditions. That's not discipline. That's convenience. Real discipline functions under stress, fatigue, boredom, and doubt. And the only way to build that is repeated exposure to pressure that refuses to accommodate weakness. Pressure also trains emotional restraint. When reacting emotionally causes problems, you learn to pause. When anger clouds judgment under pressure, you learn control. When anxiety slows execution, you learn precision. Discipline extends beyond action into thought. You become selective with attention. You stop entertaining useless mental noise. That's a higher level of discipline most men never reach. Eventually, discipline becomes self-reinforcing. You trust yourself because you've proven reliability under pressure. That trust reduces internal resistance. Less resistance means faster action. Faster action means better results. Pressure starts as an external force, but over time, discipline becomes internal. You no longer need chaos to stay sharp. The system is already installed. This is why disciplined men look calm while others panic. Their behavior has been trained under weight. They're not guessing what to do. They're executing what's already been reinforced. Discipline didn't arrive because they wanted it. It arrived because pressure made everything else impossible. Avoiding pressure feels smart in the short term, but it's the fastest way to guarantee a small life. Every time you step away from difficulty, you don't stay the same. You shrink, your tolerance lowers, your standards soften, your confidence becomes theoretical instead of proven. Average isn't a fixed position. It's a slow downward slide, masked as comfort. Men who consistently avoid pressure aren't protecting themselves. They're training themselves to be fragile. Pressure is the filter that separates men who evolve from men who stagnate. When pressure shows up and you retreat, you send a signal to yourself that you can't be trusted under load. That signal compounds. Over time, you stop aiming high because you already know you won't carry the weight. Your ambitions become quieter, safer, more realistic. That word, realistic, is often just fear, dressed as wisdom. The most dangerous thing about avoiding pressure is that it feels justified. You can always explain it. The timing wasn't right, the risk was too high, the stress wasn't worth it. And no one challenges you because society rewards comfort and calls it balance. But internally, something corrodes. You know you didn't step up. That awareness never fully goes away. It shows up as hesitation, second-guessing, and envy toward men who move decisively. Men who embrace pressure operate on a different internal logic. They understand that pressure isn't an obstacle on the path, it is the path. They don't wait until they feel ready because readiness is built inside the pressure itself. Each difficult situation expands their capacity slightly. They don't become fearless, but they become familiar with fear. Familiarity removes paralysis. That's why they move faster while others hesitate. Average men want guarantees before they commit effort. Dominant men commit effort knowing there are no guarantees. Pressure teaches this lesson brutally. When outcomes aren't promised, you learn to focus on execution instead of reassurance. That mindset alone puts you ahead of most people. While others are calculating comfort, you're accumulating experience under stress. Experience under pressure compounds faster than talent and comfort ever will. Avoiding pressure also distorts how you see risk. Small challenges start to feel big. Normal stress feels overwhelming. You become reactive instead of responsive. Life doesn't get harder. You get less capable. That's why men who avoid pressure often describe the world as hostile or unfair. It's not. They're just undertrained. Pressure would fix that, but only if they stopped running from it. Look at the men you respect, whether you admit it or not. They didn't arrive there by choosing ease. They chose environments that demanded more than they were comfortable giving at the time. Pressure forced upgrades they couldn't have planned. It refined their judgment, sharpened their instincts, and hardened their resolve. None of that happens in safety. None of that happens in avoidance. There's also a quiet arrogance in avoiding pressure. The belief that you'll somehow grow without being tested. That you'll be ready later. Later is a myth. Pressure is what creates later strength. Without it, time just passes, and habits decay. You don't suddenly wake up capable. You wake up older with the same limits. Men who avoid pressure often mistake peace for progress. But peace without growth becomes stagnation. Growth demands friction. It demands situations where failure has consequences and success requires endurance. Pressure provides that friction. Without it, you stay smooth, unmarked, and unremarkable. Pressure doesn't promise success. It promises exposure. Exposure to difficulty, to responsibility, to your own limits. Men who accept that exposure gain an edge others never develop. Men who avoid it remain average, not because they lack potential, but because they refuse the process that turns potential into reality. Here's the truth most men can't handle. If your life feels heavy, it's because it's trying to make you heavier. If everything feels intense, it's because you're being upgraded. Pressure is not a problem to escape, it's a system to submit to until you come out sharper, colder, and more dangerous. Reject pressure and you stay small. Embrace it and you evolve. So stop asking for ease. Stop praying for relief. Stop running from the weight. Pressure is necessary because power demands proof. Either you let pressure shape you or it exposes you. There is no third option. Choose wisely.